It is 7:03 p.m. It is Monday, April 6th, and this is the monthly meeting of the Concord School Board. And we are meeting virtually. I'm going to start off by asking anyone who is not speaking to mute their microphone. On our last call, we had some technical difficulties. We learned some lessons, and hopefully we will have better audio on this call. So if you are a board member and you are looking to speak, please wait to be recognized and I will recognize you. But first, before we start the meeting, let me just quickly read our emergency meeting declaration. As president of the Concord School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. So in accordance with the emergency order, here's what we're doing. First, providing public access by telephone, by video through Microsoft Teams, and also through CCTV. So all members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the platform. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by dialing in to phone number 925-391-1169, and the conference ID for this meeting is 743-722-985#. Again, it's also being broadcast on CCTV's education channel, which is Comcast Channel 6, or the live stream on YouTube for Concord NATV. And a recording of the meeting will be posted on CCTV's website. We do intend to take public comment at this meeting, as we ordinarily do at our monthly meetings. We'll do that in accordance with our policy number 136 by unmuting phone lines one by one during the public comment period. Public comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person, shorter if possible if we have a lot of commenters, which we have not so far, so we hope we have some. But we also very much encourage the submission of citizen comments via email at concordinfo@sau8.org, and we have been receiving a lot of emailed comments, which we thank folks for. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. The instructions have been provided on our website in various places, including all the calling information and the Microsoft Teams link. So we also have provided a mechanism for the public to alert us if there are technical problems that arise with access during the meeting. So if anyone is trying to access and is not able to, please call 603-513-9008. And if we are unable to resolve technical problems with access, then we will adjourn the meeting and reschedule it. So all votes that are taken during this meeting will be taken by roll call vote. I would ask that anyone participating, please mute your microphone. And there are some microphones that are not muted, and we're hearing noise from them. And wait to be recognized, I will recognize you. So the first thing I will do is take a roll call attendance of board members, and when I do that, I will ask each member to state that they are able to listen and speak, and to indicate, as required under the rights to know law, whether anyone is in the room with you. And then following that roll call, I will ask Dr. Bath to identify what administrators are present and participating. So first, let me take the roll. Ms. Cannon, are you present?
I am. I can hear you. I can respond, and I am alone in the room.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Cannon. Mr. Croto, are you present?
I am present, and I am alone, and I can hear and see.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Croto. Mr. Crush, are you present?
I am present. I'm here. I'm alone, and I can hear.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Crush. Ms. Higgins, are you present?
I am here. I am alone in the room, although I see Tommy DePaula on my TV screen, and I can hear him.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Parker, are you present?
Okay, got it. Thanks. Where's Larry? I don't see Larry. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Sorry, yes, I'm here and I'm alone in the room.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Collier, are you present?
Yes, I'm here, I can hear, and I'm alone. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Mr. Richards, are you present?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you, and I'm alone in the room.
Great, thank you so much. Ms. Smith, are you present?
I'm here and I am alone in the room as well.
Great, thank you, Ms. Smith. And I'm Jennifer Patterson. I am here, and I am alone in the room. And so now I'll ask Dr. Bass to identify those administrators who are present in the boardroom and also who are participating on the phone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Jack Dunn is here with me, perhaps a bit too close, but he's here down in the boardroom with me. Also joining me is Jim Corkum, Assistant Principal at Concord High School. Kylene Chalaskis, also Assistant Principal, Concord High School. Mike Reardon, Principal, Concord High School. Paulette Fitzgerald, Principal, Runlet Middle School. And then I also see Matt Cashman, Director of Facilities. I see Larry Prince, Director of Human Resources. And am I missing somebody? I hope I got did I mention Donna? Donna Paley, Assistant Superintendent. And Lyndon Jackett, who is the administrative executive person at the SAU.
I believe that Bob
Just tell
Belmont
Jenny
is
I have
also
somebody that
present.
can't get on.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Say again?
I believe Bob Belmont may also
Oh,
be
okay.
present.
I didn't see him. Thank you.
Not sure.
So let me just let other administrators who are present, who were not introduced by Dr. Bass, introduce themselves. Is there anyone else present?
Let's see that going on.
Okay, and we have a couple of other special guests who we will hear from later on, and
Yes.
we'll have them themselves when we get to them. So the next item is approval of the agenda. And again, I'm working from the board packet, which is posted on the website, so hopefully all members can see that. We do not have slides for this meeting, but please do look at the board packet, and hopefully we've already read through it. I would like to make the motion to add one item to the agenda, and that is that we have a discussion with respect to.
Is now joining.
We have a discussion with respect to the amethyst freak that we
right.
considered at our last monthly meeting, and I would like to add that after number 7, the superintendent search. So that would be number 8. So I will make that motion to amend the agenda, and is there a second?
Second it.
And who made the second?
That was Tom, seconding.
So I moved by Jennifer Patterson, seconded by Tom Froto, and I will take a roll call vote on approval of the amended agenda. Ms. Hannon,
Aye.
Mr. Croto,
Aye.
Mr. Crutch,
Aye.
Ms. Higgins,
Aye.
Mr. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Poinier,
Aye.
Mr. Richards,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
I don't know what she's
So
asking.
the amended agenda is,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know.
What's she asked for?
Everybody still there?
Yeah. Hello? Jenny, you there?
We're here.
We're
Maybe
out
it's
here.
okay.
Katie looks like she's frozen.
All right, I was going to say. Deep in thought.
Is now joining.
Okay.
She's back?
hi, can you hear me again? I got
Yep.
cut off.
Yep, we got you.
Oh, good. Well, I don't know if anyone leaped into the breach. Gina, did you leap into the breach with the minutes?
Ooh, nice quote. Once more into the breach.
No, I did not have faith that you would be back, Jenny.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm back. So just briefly, we've got the minutes of our March 2nd monthly meeting.
Yeah.
We have minutes of our March
course,
2nd budget work session. And Jack, if you could mute your microphone, I'm hearing your conversation.
Yeah, you got to watch Jack. He
Me?
does that a lot.
I'm not even chatting, but I'll mute.
Okay, so our March 2nd work session on the budget, which had to do with curriculum and technology. We had our March 5th work session on the budget, which had to do with student services, and that was also the meeting where we posted the budget. We had our March 9th work session on the budget, which also concerned student services. We had our March 12th work session on the budget that concerned enrollment at Concord High and CRTC. And then we had our March 15th emergency meeting, which took place on a Sunday in non-public session, but then we immediately posted our minutes and our meeting notes. That was to address the COVID-19 situation. And then we also had our March 30th special meeting for scheduling. Those are all the minutes that I have seen. There were a couple of other meetings. I have not seen the minutes for those yet. So I will be making a motion to approve all of those minutes, but first I'll ask whether board members have any amendments or comments on any of those minutes.
I do have a comment. In going through all of the minutes, I wanted to ask at some point for us to come back around. Almost every single one of those meetings raised an issue, and we said, oh, we'll come back to that. And in light of the COVID-19, they've kind of dropped off the radar, and so I wanted to bring them back onto the radar. But that does not change the fact that the agenda or the minutes of the meetings are accurate.
Jim is gone again.
Yep. We are muted.
Hello?
Yeah, we're waiting for Jenny.
Hello?
She's
Jenny may have
frozen
dropped
again.
off.
Jenny's Wi-Fi is not good.
No.
Somebody got kicked
Gina,
off.
you gonna jump in the breach?
Gina, this is Lyndon. So are you going to specify what those topics are at this point? Or am I didn't know whether we wanted to do it now or whether we wanted to come back around to it at some point in the meeting. But
Yeah,
if Jenny is frozen, should I jump into the breach and ask if anyone else has anything that they want to correct to the minutes?
Yeah,
I
perfect.
think
Good.
we should do that, yes. So does anyone have anything they want to add or correct for the board minutes of March 2nd, March 5th, March 9th, March 12th, March 15th, or March 30th?
This is Barb, and I will say I've approved the minutes because I feel that in this remote way, it's impossible to really address things.
Yeah, good.
But I was very vocal in one meeting, and not one of my comments are mentioned in the minutes. And it's just impossible to fix in this way. But I would approve the minutes with that notation that I'm wondering why nothing I said was included in the minutes.
I think that would be a question for Lauren, who took the minutes, actually.
Yes, that's probably true.
Okay, we'll check into that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Frank. I was sitting next to you. You heard everything I said.
Oh, did I ever?
None of them are written down, which maybe is a good thing. Who knows?
Are there any other corrections or comments about those minutes?
Gina, I just want to say, Barb, if you want to table one of those minutes until a future session, you may propose that. We don't have to approve all the minutes, or I think we can amend them at our next session, whichever you choose.
I'm happy to do either. I think I would defer to those that carry the burden of typing and all of this. So we can either table them or accept them and then amend them later. I defer to Lyndon, who does all this. Whatever she thinks is the best way to go, I am happy to oblige.
So, can you hear me, Barb? It's Lyndon. So,
Yes.
It seems like it would make sense to table the vote on the minutes that you feel your comments were not reflected, but I think that's only one set of minutes. And I want to say that was, I have to look through the book right now, but I think it was either the March 9th or the March 12th meeting. No, it looks like it was the March 5th meeting, Barb. So
Yes,
if you,
the special ed meeting.
if you want to take the, if you'd like to amend the, well, I don't know, there hasn't been a motion yet to approve these minutes. I suppose if
So what,
you
what,
wanted to make a motion to table the minutes of March 5th at this point, I suppose you could do that.
yeah, you can either table the minutes of March 5th, or what you could do is pass all the minutes and then come back, as Jim has suggested, at the next meeting and amend the minutes of March 5th.
Right, that's a good idea.
That might be the easiest thing.
Yeah,
Given
let's-
our situation.
Yeah, let's do
just
that.
And
Yeah.
I will work with Lyndon and Lauren to reconstruct the meeting, and you as well, Frank. We can
Sure.
maybe watch it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then amend them next time. That would be perfect. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So Gina,
So does it come back to me? Is
Yes.
there a motion to approve the minutes of the board meetings for March 2nd, March 5th, March 9th, or do we have to do them individually?
No, you can do them all together.
Together is fine, Tina. Okay, March 12th, March 25th, and March 30th. Is there a motion? So moved.
March 15th, you mean?
Oh, March 15th. Sorry, my bifocals are foggy.
That's okay.
And is there a second?
I
Second.
second it.
Okay, so that was Barb first. Yeah. Barb made the motion. And who seconded?
There's a comment.
This is Chuck. I can second or Jim, either way.
Jim seconded.
Either one.
Okay. And, let's see. Let's try and do a roll call, although I'm not sure I've got,
Gina, it's Tom.
Gina, this is Jenny. I am back on. I can try to do it. Thank you for picking up when I dropped it off. Would you like me to go through the roll call?
John, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for picking up. I'm sorry that my connection is not great tonight.
So, Jenny, it's
yes,
Tom.
go ahead.
So before we do a roll call, I think we need to have just a little discussion, just to say, in that motion, we are going to accept those meeting minutes with the express concern by Ms. Higgins to take a look at those other meeting minutes and look at them later. Or is that something we can just approve now and then do them later? Is that what we?
Yeah, you can approve them now, and you can bring them back and amend the minutes at the next meeting.
Okay.
And
Then
Jenny,
I take the roll back.
So that
Jenny,
that
it's
was
Lyndon,
my
Jenny, Lyndon, just to clarify, Barb was concerned that her comments in the meeting of March 5th were not accurately recorded. But the other minutes, I don't think there were concerns about.
Yep, thank you, Lyndon. And I came in during part of that, and I think that, as Dr. Bass said, that what we would want to do is just approve all of them now so that we have approved minutes, and we can certainly go back at our next meeting and amend the March 5th minutes. And it sounded like, Barb, you were okay with that. Is that right?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, great. So I think, is there any other discussion on this, on the motion to approve those minutes?
No, did you hear that Barb made the motion to approve and Jim seconded?
I think, Lyndon, you got that, right?
Yes, I'm set with that.
Okay, great, thank you. So I will call the roll on the motion to approve the minutes. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier? Aye. Ms. Richards?
Aye.
Mr. Richards, sorry, Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. So those minutes are approved. So next on our agenda is recognitions and reports, and I have first our student representatives and second Dr. Bass. Do we have the student representatives participating?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, she was
Are
on.
they
She was
there?
on. Let me see.
Well, no, she's different. Sydney's different.
Right there. Oh, Sydney's different?
She's
than somebody-
different. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a special recognition.
Okay. Then I don't.
Yeah. So we can go right to me. Yes.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Dr. Bass.
Okay, so a couple public service announcements, if I may. We're into religious season. For those folks who aren't aware, we have Passover, which will be beginning on Wednesday evening at sundown and occurring for the next 8 days. So we wish happy Passover to all of our Jewish friends. We also have the Western Christianity celebrating Easter coming up this Sunday. So we wish happy Easter to all of our Western Christian friends. You notice I'm making a distinction here. That's because the Eastern Church celebrates Easter a week after. So I do want to make that point. And then lastly, we have the Festival of Ramadan, which will be beginning on April 23rd and going to May 23rd. So we wish happy Ramadan to our friends of the Muslim faith. Moving on. Also, I want to say to folks that we had a very interesting TV show last week with the director, clinical director at the Concord Hospital, and he did say that the surge he expects to come to New Hampshire between April 20th and April 25th. If that be the case, then what you will see is a decrease in the severity and the magnitude of the coronavirus here in New Hampshire, which is really good news. I can't tell you where we'll be at the end of the month, but certainly it looks very promising that we'll have that surge and then be on the downward slide, moving towards a position where we can get back to a more normal life. So I did want folks to be aware of that. Next, I wanted to talk about the remote learning program that we have here. And I must say again, as I've said in a couple of my letters to the community, folks have just really stepped up to make this thing work. I can't stress enough the support, the cooperation of parents, teachers, everyone who works in the school system. Everyone's working really hard to try and make this experiment work. And we're now in our third or almost fourth week of this, and I think things are going really, really well. I was just talking to Kylene and Jim over here, the assistant principals at Concord High School, and they're telling me that they're meeting on a regular basis. The leadership team meets every single day. Coordinators meet once a week. There are collaborative team meetings that take place every 2 or 3 days. Donna Paley, our assistant superintendent, is running principal meetings every other day. She's also running a number of special ed meetings. So there's an awful lot going on to make sure that this remote learning program moves in the right kind of direction. I also would like to say, because I didn't know how it was going to work, and I thought it would be important for me to at least participate in some fashion with remote learning. So I put together a small seminar with a bunch of juniors at Concord High School, and we're looking at short stories by James Joyce and William Faulkner, and that's going really well, and it's a pleasure for me to be a part of the remote learning experiment, so I get to know what it's like and understand some of the difficulties and hurdles that we have to get over to make the class work. And speaking of that class, one of the members of that class is the state champion in the poetry contest, and that's Miss Sydney Kilgore. And so I would like to introduce her. We are really proud of her. This is an unusual contest. It's a poetry reading contest, and I'm going to ask Sydney to give a little bit more definition to the contest itself and, you know, her interest in poetry in general, because it's not something you normally see, and we're very proud of her, and I want to take this opportunity to feed her.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. So the Poetry Out Loud competition starts on the classroom level. Most English classes require every student to do it just for an assignment, and then those who wish to can go on to compete at the school level. And I chose to do that because I thought, why not? And I did it last year, and I really enjoyed it, and I have really gotten into poetry this year. And for the competition itself you take poems from the Poetry Out Loud website and chosen from all of these different genres and time periods and different authors, and then the poem is memorized and then recited, and you get scored on accuracy, like whether you're doing it verbatim word for word, and also like the effectiveness of your emotional connection to it and clarity of diction and just your overall interpretation of it. And what I really liked about this competition, it gave me the chance to really dive into poetry in a way that I hadn't really done before, because most of the time, like, I've grown up around media that's meant to hold people's attention spans, which only last for about 2 seconds, and as a result, I never really, like, if I didn't understand something within a couple seconds of, like, watching a show or reading a poem, I'd just be like, whatever, and move on. But with Poetry Out Loud, I would take like the same like 30-line text, and I would just sit with it for like weeks or months, and like as I would work on memorizing it and working on my interpretation. And it was such a valuable experience to be able to learn how to like dive into a piece of media like that and really explore it and find an understanding there.
Thank you, Cindy. That's great. And again, we're very proud of you, and it's just nice to have this opportunity to celebrate your success and to hear, where your interest comes from. And again, poetry is not something everybody jumps into. So again, we're, most pleased with what you've been able to do, and certainly it's a pleasure to have you in the class as well.
Oh, thank you.
Jenny, any board members wish to make comments?
So thank you, Sydney. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining tonight, and I hope that we get to hear you recite your poem in person later this year when we resume our in-person meetings. It's great to be able to hear about such things as the arts going on even during this difficult time of lack of connection and finding those ways of connecting with others. So congratulations, it's really wonderful.
Jen,
Thank you.
can I speak?
Dave, go ahead.
Two things. One, Sydney, way to go. The arts are phenomenal, and being the poetry winner is great. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Bass for his leadership and teaching a class so that he knows firsthand what things are like. I think that was a great move, and I really appreciate it. So thank you, Dr. Bass.
Thank you.
I'd like to,
Yeah, Barb, go ahead.
poetry is now illness and such. And the other person in my life who has been involved in Poetry Out Loud was a dance friend of Gracie's, and she's in college in California now. And she in this particular program, especially in a time now where we're all remote and we're not with one another, poetry and the arts and books and all of these things that bring us within ourselves are so helpful. So I'm just super excited that we have this going on, that we're recognizing you, sweet poet, and that our superintendent is facilitating a class. And as I've read all of James Joyce and William Faulkner, I wish to be invited to the class.
Okay, we'll be sure to do that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Barb. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations. We're very, very proud of Sydney. That's outstanding, and I'm not surprised at the quality of the students that we have, that we win something like this. But I just want to say congratulations to her.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. And are there other board members who raised their hands? I do not see anyone, but I may not be able to see everything.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. So again, congratulations, and we'll go back to Dr. Bass. Do you have other reports for us?
No, pretty much that's it. We'll keep our eye on the coronavirus and how it's impacting us. And I know we're trying to communicate with parents as often as we can. As you know, we are sending notes out. Some come from the principals, some come from me, but we're trying to maintain that communication. As I think I mentioned in my last letter, we are having April vacation. We realize that folks can't jet off to Cancun like they might have normally wanted to do, but we should have a break. I think kids, parents, and teachers all need a little bit of a respite here. I know folks are working overtime to try to make this thing work. One thing that's interesting that should be brought up, and actually the kids in the class brought it to my attention, they had said that, it's really interesting because it's no longer like I'm in school from, 9 to 3 or, 8 to 2:30, whatever, and then I come home and I do homework after practice or something like that. Now what you're finding is I might be doing work as a student, at 10 o'clock in the morning or at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's more of a collegiate-like schedule, and they find that they actually have more time and they're more relaxed in terms of their preparation and in terms of the time they can spend on a particular subject. So I think that's kind of interesting. It just gives a little bit different twist to what you might have expected in a situation like that. I also talked to a number of principals who are home with their own children during this shutdown, and they're saying the same thing, that they have more time in a way than they ever had before, and their kids have more time. So it's really an interesting phenomenon. I'm not suggesting that's something we should do, but I am commenting that we have found ways to make this actually a more enterprising opportunity than perhaps we had first thought.
Great, thank you so much. So next is public comment on agenda items, and I think what we'll ask Jack Dunn to do once again is to unmute anyone who wishes to comment. We do ask under our policy 136 that comments be kept to 5 minutes or less. And just as a recap of the significant agenda items on this agenda, we do have administrator nominations. We have a nomination for Concord High principal. We have a nomination for the school safety compliance officer. We will be having an update on the superintendent search process, and obviously all of these processes have been affected to some degree by the COVID-19 situation, so we'll be talking about how that will go forward to be sure that we do have public input. And then we do have the agenda item that I added on consideration of the amicus brief. Those are the main things, but again, we welcome comment on any agenda item. And Jack, I'll let you go through and see whether anyone wishes to comment.
So the first one is Art, and that's for the superintendent search, so he'll be briefing us in a little bit for that. I go down, I do see Miss Willingham again. If she has any comments to make.
I am all set, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Moving down, I see a couple phone numbers. I'll go with the first one ending in 0246.
Yeah, this is Kate Fry. I don't have any specific comments right now, except I was very interested in what Ms. Cannon said regarding several things have been brought up over the last couple months, and the board, with the notion that the board would discuss later, and I have not, always heard that later discussion. So I would be happy if the board explored that more.
Great, thank you, Ms. Fry. And it is certainly our intention to do so. I think I was cut off during that period of the discussion, but I also noticed that as I reviewed the minutes, and there are a number of things that we do want to make sure we circle back to, particularly when we're able to meet in a more normal fashion.
Okay. I know that is Mike. He identified himself, so that's an administrator. And then if I go to phone number ending in 5732. Oops, hold on. Nope, I don't know. I'll try again. Phone number ending in 5732. Are you there?
So calling to you. Christina Taylor.
Okay.
Is now joining.
I don't think so.
All right, I'll hold off on the 5732 and I'll move to phone number ending in 3888.
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna pass for the moment.
Okay. This is the public comment portion of on agenda items. Do you want to?
I just am not aware what the agenda items are. I had come to.
Jenny, can I speak briefly?
Sure.
I just wanted to point out to anyone on the call that you can go on the district website, sau8.org, and look under school board and look under monthly packet, and you can find the agenda and the entire packet of materials the board is considering tonight. Hopefully you were able to follow that.
And Lyndon, let me say, and to the caller, who I'm not sure what your name is, but so we do have a portion at the end of the meeting where we hear public comment on any matter.
Okay.
The agenda items that we're planning to consider right now, and we would love to hear from folks before we talk about them as a board, are the nominations for the Concord High School principal, the nomination for the school safety compliance officer. Those are the two main items. Then we'll also have an update on the superintendent search. That is mainly going to be procedural at this point. But those are the main items that we have on our agenda for tonight.
Okay, well, I think oh, okay. Yeah, I do have an opinion about, I do want to make a public comment about the principal.
Okay.
I've met him at meetings, at a single meeting, and had been very much looking forward to meeting Mr. Barry. I know that kind of fell through, and I have some concerns that I don't know that you guys are going to get to this evening, but I sure hope you do, which are regarding some of the stuff that has to do with competency-based education and how it's being enacted at the school, in addition to the grading system, the proposed grading system, and a bunch of other stuff like that. But as it pertains to Mr. Michael Reardon, I guess I would, I'm not sure how these things work, but that I would propose that we keep him. I know we're in the middle of coronavirus and everything's kind of in an uproar. I would propose that we keep him kind of maybe more as an interim, because I don't really like the direction that this high school is going with competency-based education, and I think he's pretty on board with that, and I really think that we need to have some more discussions about how this is being rolled out, and I'd like to hear some kind of fresh voices about this.
Great. Thank you for your comment. If you could identify yourself, and then I'll ask Dr. Bass whether he wants to make any comments, because there may be some information that he can provide in response. But thank you.
My name is Christina Taylor.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So, yeah. So I actually had the pleasure of talking with Christina a while back. We had I thought, a very good conversation about where things are at the high school. And the whole issue of competency-based education, as you know, has been fraught with a lot of difficulty. And as I don't think the community knows, but certainly members of the board know, that we did put together an ad hoc committee to look at the whole issue of competency-based grading at the school and to come up with a plan as to how we're going to approach that. And as I assured Ms. Taylor, we're not going to do anything until we have it set right, and we don't have that right now. I do want to make one very clear statement, though, that next year's seniors, the current juniors, will be completely unaffected. So we want to keep their status sacrosanct. We do not want to change anything about their particular status in the school. So they will complete next year untouched in terms of the way their grades have been presented to them in class, and as well as how they're going to be presented on the transcripts. What happens with the whole grading system, again, still has to be, I think, teased out. And I think if we make any change to the actual transcript, that means the grades that actually go to the colleges, more than likely that won't take place until the incoming freshmen. So in other words, we don't want anyone who's currently on we don't want anyone who's in our current system to have a double grading point. So in other words, we're not going to shift over while kids are still in their high school years. But again, we've not come to a definitive position on that, but I do want to be clear that we are going to protect the next year's seniors for sure, and we'll look at a way of bringing this program in whatever form it takes, in a way that does not affect the kids currently in the high school. We don't want to create unnecessary and undue hardship for them in terms of their understanding.
Great, thank you, Dr. Bass. And certainly this was something that we heard about at our last monthly meeting, and we're actually very appreciative that it was brought up, and there has been, as Dr. Bass says, some good follow-up that was unfortunately interrupted due to COVID-19. So thank you for raising those issues.
Can I make one other point too? As I said to Ms. Taylor, we're not going to do this without involvement with the community. So there will be opportunities, and I will be present for that. There will be opportunities to discuss with the community about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I do want to hear what community members have to say. So this is not a decision that's going to be made in isolation. I want to be clear about that too.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bass. Ms. Taylor, thank you for your comments, and please feel free to make comments during the later period as well if you wish. So, Jack, are there other members of the public who may wish to comment now?
I've gone down each of the numbers, and somebody has acknowledged except the phone number ending in 5732, so I'll try that again. I guess all I'll say is if they can hear me and they're having difficulties, they can dial the 603-513-9008 number, and we can try to give them a hand. But I think I've called that number 3 times now. I mean, I see it sitting there, but I don't know. So.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Jack, and thank you to those who are participating. We really, really appreciate hearing from folks. So next on our agenda is personnel, and I don't know whether that is Larry, you will be presenting that, or Dr. Bass.
I can do that, Jen, thank you.
Great.
The first item on the personnel agenda is the request for a professional leave of absence. This is from Anthony Viagra, a high school teacher who will be going to school to complete a certification as a music therapist. And in order to do that, he's requesting an unpaid leave of absence for the first semester of next year. So I would ask that the board approve that request.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Do any board members have questions about that request?
Oh, yeah, David Parker. Who is
it? David.
Who is he going to be replaced by?
We will have to post that position, Dave. We'll post it as a long-term sub, actually as a teacher for the first semester.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Prince? Is there a motion to approve the professional leave?
So moved by Barb.
Okay, thank you, Barb. Moved by Barb. Second.
I'll second it by Chuck.
And Chuck. Great, thank
Yep.
you. Any discussion?
Back again.
Hearing none, I will call the roll. All in favor of approving the professional leave, Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Thank you.
Simeone.
Is now joining.
Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Mr. Crush.
Aye.
Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Poinier.
Aye.
Mr. Richard.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Patterson votes aye. So that professional leave is approved.
Thank you. We have 2 administrator nominations to bring forward for this year. One is Mike Reardon, the Concord High School principal. He will be beginning tomorrow, actually, will be working 61 days under a CAA contract, which will give him a gross of $33,455. And then we have a nomination for the school safety compliance officer. That would be Karen Fisher Anderson. She'll be working 60 days from tomorrow forward for the rest of this school year at a salary of $28,500.
Okay, let me jump in on this, Jenny, if I could. So thank you, Larry, for bringing that forward. But I do want to provide some color on both these candidates. Let me go in reverse order, if I could. So looking at Karen Fisher Anderson, I got to tell you, we are so lucky to get someone of her caliber. She is absolutely off the charts. She was stationed at the United States Naval Academy for, I want to say, a good 10 years. She's a JAG officer. She was there during the sexual abuse scandals that took place at the Academy, so she is well seasoned in how to deal with these kinds of issues. We actually employed her as a consultant before we hired her because we had an issue that we had to deal with here. And in fact, I got two of the assistant principals with me here who actually worked with her on this. Again, just absolutely extraordinarily thorough, really top shelf. She'll be in a position to train us. All administrators and all teachers in the district will be trained by her. Her greatest comment, I thought, was, if I do my job right, you won't need me in another 3 or 4 years because you'll all know how to do it. So I thought that was just absolutely great. So we are thrilled to have someone of her caliber join our employ.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bass. And I was on the search committee, and I was also incredibly impressed. I think we're very, very lucky. I would echo Dr. Bass's comments. And I think and Barb, I don't remember whether Barb was on that. I think you were, also. So if either of you wish to speak to that nomination, please go ahead.
I thought that she was absolutely amazing, incredibly competent, straightforward, and couldn't be happier with her as a potential to come aboard on this position.
Great. Thank you, Gina.
I support from afar. I wasn't involved much, but I trust my board and my district.
Great. Thank you, Barb. It seems like such a long time ago that we interviewed her. I can hardly remember who was there, but I was so impressed. And I'll make a motion to approve her for this position.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Great. So moved by Jenny, seconded by Gina.
Yeah.
Any discussion or questions? Dave?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, I will call the roll. All in favor of approving Sharon Fisher Anderson as the school safety compliance officer. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Sturdo.
Aye.
So I don't know who's speaking, but if you could turn off your microphone, I would appreciate it. Other than the board members who are voting. Sorry, Mr. Curdo?
Aye.
Mr. Kress?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So that nomination is approved. And so now, Dr. Batson,
Yes.
I'm sorry, someone has a microphone on.
Not like, what do you want to talk about? It's like,
Someone
get that.
Yeah, Jack's trying to troubleshoot it. Can you hear me all
I'm
right?
just going to mute everybody
Yep,
that.
I hear you now.
Okay. I'll move to the principal's nomination if I could.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is one of those classic cases of the best laid plans of mice and men. We had a wonderful committee put together. There was, I think, 16 members of the committee, which included community, teachers, support staff, administrators, myself, and 2 board members. We interviewed 4 candidates who we thought merited attention. We chose 2 as a finalist. The game plan was to have each candidate spend an entire day at the high school, starting at 7:15 in the morning and going till about 4:30. They get about a half hour to an hour break, and then they're going to have dinner with myself and the board over a 2-hour span of time, or however long we as a board thought it should take. And then at the end of that, we would make a decision as a board and superintendent together on which of the 2 candidates we felt we wanted to bring forward. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 issue, that whole process got completely interrupted. So again, just for the board's edification and for those who might be listening outside, Mr. Reardon actually on the Friday before the COVID broke and we had to close school down, Mr. Reardon had some issues in the building that he had to attend to, so that interfered with his rotations that we had set up for him, and then around 1:30 or so he became sick and had to go home. So his rotation at that time was not able to be completed or fulfilled. So at the time we were thinking we'll have to bring him back at a second time. Unfortunately, that weekend, the virus issue broke, and we actually, as you know, had to shut school down. Meanwhile, the other candidate was also a very good candidate, Mr. Berry. We had him scheduled for Wednesday. Well, unfortunately, Wednesday was a day in which very few faculty were there. As you recall, Monday and Tuesday was all hands on deck as faculty were stretched out trying to figure out a way to put this whole remote learning program together. So on Wednesday, Jim Corkum and Kylene Chalauskis put together a rotation for Mr. Barry as best we possibly could, given the circumstances that we had, and they can speak to that. And then we finished the day with a luncheon over here at the central office, which included one board member and all of the central office staff. So I never got the full robust positioning that I would have liked. However, what I did receive, though, was from all 4 assistant principals. I got a narrative essay from each one of them that was unanimously endorsing Mr. Reardon as the principal. I should also say that the leaning on the search committee, when we recommended the 2, was towards Mr. Reardon. And then Mr. Reardon, actually, to his credit, put out a survey to the faculty, and 92% of the faculty came back endorsing him as their principal. So I was pretty confident that that was the best choice. And then one other comment I do wish to make, Mr. Berry was also under a time gun, if you will, because he was offered the position of principal of Souhegan High School. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time to play with. We had already stretched him out a week because he was offered that job a week prior to the time that he came in to see us. But I'm going to turn it over to Kylene and Jim to add their commentary because they were on the search committee and they set up both of the rotations for our 2 candidates.
Great, thank you, and thank you to Jim and Kylene.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak on behalf of the principal candidate search. Like Frank said, both of us, Jim and I, were on the committee and then participated in both visits. The couple of pieces I'm going to speak to on this is that prior to us even starting this process, we actually put out a survey to parents, staff, community members, students actually also participated in the survey and told us what they were looking for in a candidate. And a couple of those pieces that they told us they were looking for is an excellent listener and communicator. They were looking for someone who was focused on safety and security and making sure that all members of our community felt like they had someone to go to and listen to, and also that there was a level of visibility within the school and within the community. So that was something we were looking for in either of the candidates. And I think that part of why we saw 92% of the faculty alone supporting Mike Reardon is because those are qualities that we have been able to see in Mike Reardon over the last, what I would consider one of the longest interviews I've ever seen out of a administrator at Concord High School of 3.5 months. And so when you think about that kind of an interview process and still receiving 92% support of your faculty, I would say that those are the qualities that he is definitely exhibiting at Concord High School every day. One of the other things I can speak to is that while not always being a member of the administrative team, I have now participated in the administrative team twice at Concord High School, one in 15-16, and I'm fortunate enough to be a part of the team again this year. But over the last 22 years, I think I've probably worked with probably between 15 and 20 different administrators. And I can speak pretty strongly to the fact that currently with Mike Reardon guiding us, we have probably one of the stronger administrative teams that we've had at Concord High School. And I think that's worth noting. The team of assistant principals with Mike Reardon's guidance have been able to provide a level of stability to a community that has not had that for the last 6 to 9 months, and that is no easy task. And due to Mike Reardon's transparency, and I understand that not everybody necessarily is in agreement about his philosophies, but the person behind the philosophies and the character is worth noting, and is someone that I really would like to continue working for, to be quite honest. One of the other pieces that I just want to share is Mike Reardon's ability to compromise when given information. He has great ideas, but he is also someone, once he's heard from parents, the number of coffees and sessions he's allowed himself to speak with our community members has been notable, and I just thought that would also be worth noting. So I'm going to let Jim talk as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here tonight. And not to repeat a lot of the same points that Mr. Laskis has already made, and I would absolutely defer to the few board members we had on the committee. But the things that stood out most to me is, when you go through this interview process. I'm sorry.
Could you tell us what your role is?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jim Cork. I'm assistant principal at Concord High School.
Thank you.
And a lot of the times, as anyone who sat on an interview committee, a lot of the times where you interview candidates, you're really just getting, sometimes in a sense, sort of that dog and pony show. You don't necessarily know who the person is behind the interview. And even going right back to that interview, I can tell you the person who Mike Reardon presented as in the interview is who he is as an administrator. And when you go back to the survey that he had the staff do, he was very clear from day one when he was put in to be the full-time principal moving forward that even if he was the selection of the committee, he was not going to keep his name in there unless he had the support of the entire faculty. And overwhelmingly, he has the support of that faculty moving forward. When we think about that process in the 2 days Kylene and I had set up for the candidates, Dr. Bass said it well, it was best laid plans. We had that full day set up for Mr. Reardon on the 13th, while all at the same time he's still being the principal of a building of 1,600 kids and over 200 staff. And on that same day where the news about COVID-19 was coming out and whether we're going to have to close school or not. So he was constantly pulled from these different sessions that we had set up for him. And then that following Wednesday, when we brought in the other candidate, who again, was a fine candidate, that's when we had the school closure. We didn't feel it was appropriate to then invite kids in after closing school to come and meet the candidate. So we set up the best possible rotations we could where that candidate had the opportunity to meet staff, both in person and remotely, had the chance to meet with the administrative team, and again, had many strengths, but the fact that we've had that opportunity to see Mr. Reardon in action for the last 3 or 4 months, we all felt very confident in moving forward with him as a candidate. I think the piece that I think comes to mind for me when I think about Mr. Reardon, his decision making, we have these we can have these meetings where we're planning out things and philosophies and programs. And can sometimes get lost in the strategic thinking, and he is just so good and masterful at distilling all these decisions back to, well, what is the best thing for kids in teaching and learning? As we start to maybe go off in a direction where we may even start swaying from that, he's very good at bringing us back to our purpose and what we're really all meant, the reason we're all here, and that's for teaching and learning with kids. So I think for me, and I think I speak for Kylene and the other administrators at Concord High School, that was the reason why he, for us, is our unanimous choice, and again, 92% of the faculty at Concord High School agree with that.
Great. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and I would very much like to hear from the board members.
I would like to speak, Jenny. It's me, Barb.
Yeah. So Barb Higgins and Jim Richards were on the search committee, and so go ahead, Barb.
Sure.
Barb, we're not here.
Okay, here I am.
Okay. No, we're not hearing you. I'm not sure what's wrong with the microphone.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Now I do.
Yeah. We could hear you, Barbara.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now I do. Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm going to give a different perspective. I feel very, very good about our decision, but as a board member with strong community ties and several years of teaching at Concord High School, what I want the public to know, because there was a concern about lack of transparency and making decisions because we can. The major thing about the other candidate, Mike Berry, was that he was very, very, very sincere in his effort to be the right person, and it had to be right for him as well. And he was very, very clear in that life sometimes unfolds and things happen in the way that they're supposed to. And he was not at all tied into having to be the next principal of Concord High School. He truly felt connected to what was best for us. He also understood and did a lot of research on all that we've gone through as a school district in the last year. And those of us that were in that interview, the thing that we liked the most about him was his willingness to be detached from it and not look at it like some campaign promise type situation. I also know Sauhegan High School very, very well from all my years as coaching, and that fit for him is phenomenal. So I feel as corny as this may sound, that he's where he should be, and we have the person that we should have. We need our high school to feel comfortable and confident. We need our staff and faculty to feel that their leader is the person that knows them. And so my feeling and my reassurance to the community is that we have the right person in the job and that the other candidate was not shortchanged. I feel that he probably feels really good about his new place and how this all went down. So I don't know if that sounds hokey or not, but
No, it's
I
great.
just feel it's important that our community knows that this process was phenomenal. And I'm the first one to be picky. I have my history, and I feel really, really good about Mike's new job for him and our Mike's new job for us.
Thank you.
Barb, thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful. I really appreciate it, and thank you for being on the committee. Jim, did you have anything to add on the committee?
Yeah, let me just do it from a different point of view. I want everyone to realize that we had not only board members and administrators, we had teachers and we had students on our search committee, and both those groups were very, supportive and strong for Mr. Reardon. And we went through several candidates and narrowed it down to what all of us were pretty confident were the two best candidates. And in the end, I think that the recommendation of Mr. Reardon, I would agree with Barb, fits with what we need. Certainly with regards to the community, we still have to have and keep working on our communication and transparency and our listening to input from the community. But I am comfortable with this decision.
Great, thank you, Jim. And I know Dave has a question. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, thank you. I was fortunate enough to spend some time alone with Mike Reardon, probably over a month or so ago, but also to phone interview with Mr. Barry. And obviously, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Reardon and what he's done and what he's come in and accomplished. And I liked Mr. Barry as well. I thought he was creative, enthusiastic. He was at a stage in his career where that was somewhat appealing, because he would be with us 5 or 10 years. And I'm not sure that's going to be the case with Mr. Reardon, but when you have 92% approval from your faculty, which is something I would never get, and you get the type of healing that he's been able to do while he's here, I think it's a good decision. I would say the public, in the best of times and the worst of times, the public hasn't been as involved as we would have liked. And so I think we can be proactive in making sure that members of the community get to address Mr. Reardon if they have particular concerns, either through the board or directly, because we don't in any way want to shortchange the process of leadership in this district right now. I have had some community members show some concern, and I speak for them, but I do agree with the decision. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Parker. And Gina, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I don't have any disagreement with the decision. I guess I have some concerns, as Dave was speaking, to the public involvement in this. The public, through no one's fault, except maybe some bat in China. It's not anyone's fault that this process went down the way it went down. Nevertheless, we promised the community that they would have a chance to have input, and they didn't. And so my concern is that the process was not as we said it was, and that the public may feel that they did not have an opportunity to speak and be heard.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Cannon. And, this was such a challenge for all of us because we have been trying so hard to have transparent processes, and the timing just could not have been worse with the COVID-19 and this particular process. It was, as Dr. Bass described, just very, very challenging. And I know I didn't have the opportunity to meet either of the candidates in any of those forums. So I feel sad about that. But I'm glad that we did have so many board members and so many others who are on the search committee who did have that opportunity. Dr. Bass, did you have any other comments that you wanted to make on this nomination?
Yes, one other comment that I think is important. It goes back to Dave and Gina's comment, and that is, we do want the public to be satisfied. We want the public to know that they have an opportunity to engage with our leadership, our principals, our teachers at any time for whatever reason. And so I do feel bad that this process didn't allow that to occur in the manner that we would have liked. But certainly going forward, and this virus thing will end. Trust me, it will end at some point. We will be back in school. And I think I'd invite parents to be part of the process as school reopens, whether it's this spring or next fall, to come to the school, to be a part of what's happening in the school. And I think as we've talked about with members of the board previously, we want the conversation. We don't want parents to feel, I can't call the school because I'm not going to get any satisfaction, so I'm just going to complain to my board member. No, call the school, and if you don't get satisfaction, then you call the superintendent's office, and you will get a response, I can guarantee you. So I want that process to occur. And the nice thing about the way Concord contracts are set up, it's a plus and a minus. The plus for the board and the community is they're one-year contracts. So at any point in time, if the community and the board feel that, things just don't seem to be going the way we'd like them to, you can open up that position. So whoever you have in any of the helms here that drive our ships, you always have that luxury of being able to say, is this really the direction we want, and are things really happening the way we thought they would happen? So I think that's a good caveat to have. It's a very luxurious position for this district. Not many in the state of New Hampshire have that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bass.
Hey, Jenny, it's Chuck. Yeah. Hey, Jenny. Thank you. Sorry. So listen, I have not been involved in this process directly due to scheduling, but I have had a very vested interest because I have a daughter who year after next will be a freshman at Concord High. So I've been kind of behind the scenes talking to people and did a little bit of homework. And I think, as far as two points. One is as far as the process of transparency, as far as the process of community and public involvement. I mean, we are dealing with a once-in-a-100-year kind of pandemic. So that did kind of was a game changer, and things probably did not go as well as any of us would like. And you know what? I find it hard to have meetings, just remotely and not look out and see people just because that's who I am. But this is the world we're living in now, as well we should. But secondary to that, as far as Mike goes, I have heard a lot of positive. I feel very good about his leadership. And I also feel good. I remember there was an instant where there was a drill at the high school, and he took responsibility for some things that went well, and he took responsibility for some things that did not go as planned. To me, that speaks volumes of a leader's character, that speaks volumes to the person who he is, and I would be the one being comfortable making the nomination for Mike to be the principal.
Thank you, Chuck. So I think we've had a nomination, and is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Jenny, I'm sorry, I missed who made the motion initially.
So I think the motion was made by Chuck, and it was seconded
Absolutely.
by Danielle, and then I think Jim would like to speak.
Yeah, I just feel like we should address the Ms. Taylor who commented this evening, and I did want to say something with that, and I want to thank her for commenting. One of the things that we need to that we would consider and we would need to take into account with her recommendation of maintaining an interim is the difficulty in finding an interim, and that's nothing. Mr. Reardon may or may not choose that. Also, I want to point out that just like a la carte, having an interim is a very expensive way to have a principal for a year. So while I do weigh her comments and appreciate her input, I think that I'm more comfortable with voting for Mr. Reardon and having him be our principal. And but I did want to give her the benefit and the respect of answering that question.
Great, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. So I think we've had a motion and a second, and we're into discussion. Are there other board members who would like to say anything in discussion before we vote on the nomination?
Jenny, it's Tom.
Yep, Tom, go ahead. Thank you.
So my opinion is my own opinion, and I'll give you my ideas. And from what I saw from Mike Reardon when I first met him way back, right as soon as he got into the position, he had already hit the ground running. He was talking to me about scheduling. He was talking to me about grading, things that we could have gotten an interim who came in and just wanted to sit back and say, okay, I'm gonna just sit back here and make sure the ship stays sailing. And this guy was already moving the ship in a direction. I feel like he's dedicated. He's attended our board meetings. He's listened both to good and bad sometimes, and taken it very well and has moved through it. I think he's a great listener. And anytime, and this has already been said, but I'm going to say it again, anytime you can get 92% of your faculty behind you, and I don't know if that includes the administrative team or not, but that's just amazing. I hope that it stays that way, and he will certainly get my vote.
Great, thank you, Tom. Barb, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments by other board members? Yeah, and I guess we have a delay, so we get to see Tom talking after he finishes speaking. I'm trying to get used to that now. So my impressions of Mike Reardon have similarly been very favorable, just I think similar to what Chuck said in terms of his willingness to come in and step in a challenging time and, to really try to jump into things. And so, although I did not have any opportunity to participate in the search process, I do feel very grateful that he has applied and is willing and wanting to devote his time to Concord. So I will call the roll on the motion to approve the nomination of Michael Reardon as Concord High principal. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Crodo.
Aye.
Mr. Crush.
Aye.
Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Poinier.
Aye.
Mr. Richard.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Patterson votes aye. So the nomination is approved. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, everyone who participated in that search committee. It was a lot of work. We really appreciate it. So now we are back to Larry. I believe we have the veteran salary schedule and the first position.
Thank you, Jen. Just a clarification, did you vote on the compliance officer?
Yes.
I think we did.
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay.
Yes.
And she was unanimously approved. We just took it out of order.
Okay, that's fine. So next we have the annual folks who are eligible for the veteran salary scale for the next 2 years. According to the teacher's contract, we can allow the top 10. We only had 6 apply. So what you're approving today are the 6 who will be on this salary scale for next year and the following year, with the provision that they cannot return full-time after that year, which would be 2022.
Great. Thank you, Larry. And so that list was in our board packet. Are there any questions from board members about the veteran salary schedule?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm new to this whole thing. So can someone please explain this to me?
Sure, let's do that. Thanks, Steve.
The veteran salary scale is basically a provision to reward veteran teachers who have been here for 17 years, and they must be age 53 at the time they apply. So it used to be years ago planned retirement. When a teacher told us that they were retiring, they were given a little bump in their salary. So this is a different way to do it, but we split it up over 2 years, and we reward those teachers who meet the criteria. There were 33 eligible eligible teachers this year, and the top, and 6 people applied.
Great, thank you, Larry. Gina, does that answer your question, or do you have other questions?
Not really. So these people are going to get sort of like a addition to their salary, and then in 2 years they are retired. Yes?
That's correct.
Now I understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks for asking the question. It's good for all of us to understand what we're doing. So I appreciate it. Are there any other questions about this from board members? And if not, is there a motion to approve the list of 6?
So moved.
Okay,
Barb.
move Barb.
Second.
Seconded by Gina. Thank you. Any further discussion? Being none, I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Mr. Crush.
Aye.
Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Fournier.
Aye.
Mr. Richards.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson votes aye. So the veteran salary schedule is approved. And next we have the spring coaches. Is that still on, Larry?
Right now, we don't know a start date, but we wanted to be prepared in the event that the NHIAA does have any sort of semblance of a spring season. So we do have a few new coaches that we'd like to bring forward, and some returning coaches. On the nomination on your board packet, the returning coaches are on page 62. That's the Excel sheet. And then I have 4 new ones who are new to Concord or new to coaching. First one is Warren Bartlett as an assistant track coach at Concord High. He's a step 2 at 2,784. Christopher Byer, an assistant track coach at Concord High, a step 3 position, 2,999. Kayla Chase, supplemental track coach at Concord High at 1,713. And Michelle Bartlett, a girls head track coach at the middle school at 2,570.
Great. Thank you, Larry. And I have a question. What happens with the coaching stipend if there is not a spring season?
Yeah,
We will not issue contracts if there is no season at all. We have been talking to Steve Mello, and if there is a partial season or some semblance of a season, we will pay them their full stipend.
Right.
We weren't thinking of giving them, nickel and diming them. But it's a wait and see right now.
Great. No, thank you. Any other questions from board members on these nominations, Dave?
Yeah, they did. So, what if we don't have a season? Are they also paid?
No.
No, they will not be paid if there's no season.
Larry, I have actually, things are moving pretty quickly for me, but I want to ask you a question on the previous funding, and that is, what percentage of people in the last 2 years decide to take a stipend like that of the overall faculty?
The veteran salary scale?
Yeah.
I think last year we had 6, and the year before we had a full allotment of 10.
So if I'm going to retire in 2 years, I can apply regardless of what age I'm at?
No, you have to be 53, and you have to have been in the district for 17 years. That's the minimum criteria.
Okay. And what if you're older?
That's fine. You're on the list. You can apply every year after that, once you meet the minimum.
So I guess my question would be, what percentage why wouldn't you, if you knew you were going to retire in a couple of years, get that additional stipend?
There would be no reason not to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for the questions, Dave. Anything else on the coaches? Any other questions or comments on the coaching nominations? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve why don't we do 2 separate ones? One for the new coaches and then one for the full slate of coaches. So is there a motion to approve the new coaches?
I make the motion to approve the new coaches.
Great, thank you, Chuck. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So moved by Chuck, seconded by Jim. Gina, do you have a question? That's for later, right, Gina?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please remind me, raise your hand and I will call on you later for that question. So any other questions on, or comments, discussion on the coaches? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crust?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Patterson votes aye, so the new coaches are approved 8-0 with 1 abstention. And that is Ms. Higgins. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the full slate of spring coaches? And again, it's conditional on there being a spring season. Danielle?
Nope.
Okay. So looking for someone to move to approve that full slate.
I so move.
I'll make the
Go ahead, Chuck.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the full slate.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
And I'll second it. It is
Okay,
conditional
so
on having a spring session, though.
So moved by Chuck, seconded by Gina. None of the stipends will be paid if there is not a spring season. If there is a spring season, even if it's truncated, they will get full stipend. That was what Larry had said.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yep. So any further questions or discussion on the full slate of coaches? So seeing none, I will call the roll on approving the full slate of coaches. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So the full slate is approved, 9-0. Okay. Larry, is that all for personnel?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you.
Sorry. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny, can I ask a personnel question? It's Liza.
Liza, yes, go ahead.
So I believe that historically during the April meeting, we've talked about contract renewal for administrators, both in central office and across the schools. I know that we're not doing that tonight. I just wanted to ask for an update from Larry, please. Thank you.
So I think, I'm not sure what kind of update you're looking for, but I think, we had deferred those contracts until after we approved the budget. Typically, we've approved the budget by the April meeting, so that's why we do it then. And I think our intention is to have that vote on April 13th after we vote on the full budget. But Liza, was there something else that you were looking for in terms of information about the nominations?
Not for this meeting, but that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Larry, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly what we were thinking. We will have a couple of vacancies, but you'll see that in the nomination sheet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Larry. And again, this is something, the timing of it we had talked about in the meeting, the scheduling meeting that we had on the 30th. Okay, so our next agenda item is an update on the superintendent search, and for that I will turn it over to Tom Croto, and Danielle I think is also involved with that, and I know we have Art Betancourt from NESDEC who will also be helping with that update. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you first.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. So I look back in our meeting notes, and way back on March 2nd, it seems like forever ago right now, we did say at our March 2nd meeting that we would would meet as a committee and go over committee rules and make questions, and we did in fact do that. And we also said that we were going to interview candidates, and we in fact did do that. So our screening committee has accomplished those things and more. And I'm going to turn it over to Art here and Jack in just a few minutes. But where we are in the process is, in an ordinary process, I think that candidates' names would be brought forward to the board. The board would have an opportunity to do some vetting. And at this point, what has happened is, and don't mean to be redundant, but it's important, both sides, our school district side and the candidate sides, have asked for a little bit of a time so that things can be straightened out in both districts, given the pandemic that we're all facing right now. So the process is taking forward steps, but I think a little more measured steps. There are also some questions with regard to expectations that I think we've got those pretty well taken care of, because we were able to have NESDEC put together information from the forums and from the survey, and we actually built all of our interview questions around the information that came out of the surveys and the forums. So we're all set with being able to let the candidates know what our expectations are. I think that's going to come out more as we meet as a board with those folks. Also, start date and timeline. That's obviously where we are at this point, is still negotiating how, I wouldn't say negotiating, we're still discussing how are we going to proceed and still have good fidelity from their districts as well as ours. And confidentiality, I can't stress enough. Once we do move to another step where we're actually talking to those candidates, we do need to respect their confidentiality until we can really get people on board, and then we will be able to vet them confidentially, but also their names will come out. So as you can all imagine, once we start to ask questions about people to other people, then word's going to travel very fast. There's also some talk out there about salary, which I think can be taken care of pretty easily. So at this point, we have candidates. We are ready to put them forward to the board. I want to have Art and Danielle and Jack have an opportunity to say anything that I've probably forgotten. But so if Art, are you listening right now?
Hello there, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to see you in cyberspace. I wish we could meet face to face, but obviously the circumstances are a little challenging at this point. I think Tom did a great job of introducing where we are, or telling folks where we are in the process. And I think going forward, there are some questions and some areas that the entire board will want to consider in terms of how the search plays out, given the challenging circumstances that we have facing us in terms of communicating with people, public involvement, decision making, that sort of thing. But before I went on, I know Tom also referred to Jack and Danielle, and I didn't want to go too far down the road without Tom, you maybe wanting something from them as well?
Well, I certainly don't want, yes, I absolutely want to have input from both those folks. I should tell the board that we had a just wonderful committee. It was made up of 2 board members, myself and Danielle. We had teachers represented, we had student representation, we had administration, we had community members, and we had parents. So we really had a great great group. They work very hard. And I know that they're anxious to see the fruits of their labor come to fruition, which I have already communicated with them that we are moving forward, but we are moving forward very measuredly. Jack, Danielle?
I don't have anything to add yet, but I will certainly chime in if I feel like something's missing. I think you guys are doing well.
Same here. I don't have anything to chime in at the moment. I'd rather let Art talk about the process that the board hired him and his firm to do, and then we'll fill in after that. Thank you.
Would you like me to move ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to echo what you just said, Tom. The preliminary screening committee that I was meeting with as you were interviewing candidates was just a wonderful group to work with. Very cooperative. They listened to one another, and I think they were very, very committed to the time and to the quality of the interactions that allowed them to make some decisions. It was truly a pleasure to work with them. And I also want to say that Tom did a wonderful job of leading the group, as did Danielle. And I want to thank Jack for the coordination that he provided as we went through the various stages of the preliminary screening for the search. All of these folks did a great job, and they were really a pleasure to work with all of them. We've accomplished a lot up until this point. Obviously, we've worked with the screening committee, but the other thing we've done is we've gone out to the community and focus groups, as well as the survey, to get feedback from the community and use that feedback to create what we term a successful candidate profile. Tom mentioned this a few minutes ago, but the successful candidate profile was used in the interview process. That was the way of bringing the community input into the process and using that community input to formulate questions and to interview the candidates. So I think that process went very well. Where we are now, and again, the virus outbreak, I think, has created some issues for all of us. And I think what we might want to discuss this evening is how we can proceed in a way that the board feels will meet its needs in terms of understanding who the candidates are, but also how we will meet the board's needs in terms of its expectations for community involvement, and then down the road, decision-making in terms of who you might select as your superintendent, and then finally the timeline for that superintendent to actually come on board and begin to serve in his or her role. So that's really what's in front of us now, and the uncertainty that we're faced with, I think, makes that somewhat difficult. We had originally in our timeline thought that we would be actually interviewing candidates perhaps in the month of March. Well, here we are in April, and obviously we can't do that. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think we know what April is going to look like in terms of the limitations we have for bringing people together to get input and to carry out an interview and a process that you folks will be satisfied with. So I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is where we think we are given the circumstances of the virus outbreak, and what that means in terms of what the next steps might be as you move forward. Clearly, one of the things we want to try to get a handle on is when the board might like to actually interview the candidates. Now that sounds like a fairly simple thing to arrange, but I think there's a complication here that is created by the COVID-19 situation. Not only has that interrupted your schedule in Concord in terms of how you might move forward in ways that you think are inclusive of the community and give you the kinds of interaction with the community and the feedback you need. But we also have in the applicant pool superintendents and assistant superintendents and other candidates who have an obligation and feel a responsibility to their own districts. So some have expressed to me some discomfort with having their names come public at a time when really their districts are in, I don't want to call it a crisis, but certainly in a situation of uncertainty. And so I think what we have is the needs of the school board, which are certainly important, but we also have the needs of the individual candidates in terms of being respectful of them and their positions, in terms of how they interact in their communities and what the expectations are for them in their community. So let me stop there and give people an opportunity to weigh in if you'd like to ask questions or seek clarification.
All right.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
All right. What would it be possible to interview them virtually? I mean, we really don't expect to be able to see people face to face. I don't think. I mean, this is our reality.
Right.
And how can we move forward given the new reality and problem solve given the challenge? I mean, because we're living in this world now. We won't be able to see them face to face properly and meet contract obligations and schedules and timeframes and things like that. So I don't know why that can't be done.
Well, I'm not saying it can't be done. I guess what I think might be important is for everyone to agree that perhaps the next step, if it is the next step, the next step or a next step would be virtual interviews between the board and the candidates that it expects to interview.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get too hard. I just think that this is our reality, and I don't want to. I mean, I think we may need to agree on these things and probably create a new schedule and such. But we can't stop.
Okay.
So thank you, Dave, and I think I'm in a similar place in terms of thinking about this. I mean, we spend a lot of time, and we're so appreciative of the work that NESDEC did to really give a good structure to the superintendent search process, and we worked very hard to publicize that so that everyone understood that we would have this kind of massive phase of public input on the characteristics that we were looking for. Then we would have the screening committee operating on a confidential basis. Then we would have names made public, and the public would again have the opportunity to see and interview the people, and the board would also have a robust process of interviewing the candidates. And it seems to me that the circumstances have changed that process in terms of needing to elongate it, but not beyond what we need to, because I think, as Dave says, it's certainly possible for us as a board to interview candidates remotely. I know the screening committee interviewed the candidates remotely because they had to after the whole COVID-19 situation had begun. I think it will be possible for members of the public to meet candidates remotely. What I think may really change, though, and it really does have to do with the fact that all districts across the country are in circumstances that are very different from what we had thought about when we set up this process, is that we may want to continue the confidential phase of this a little longer than we had anticipated, bring in the board still on a confidential basis, and then make the names public. And we absolutely will not and cannot sacrifice the opportunity for the public to get to know our finalists. And then after that, the board would make its decision. So that might, just under these extraordinary circumstances where, for understandable reasons, candidates might not want it to be known publicly that they might be leaving, just to give us a little more time in that confidential phase. but being really clear about what the next steps would be, and that they absolutely would involve the public input and process that we had contemplated.
Jenny, can I offer a comment here?
Yes,
Yeah.
I see who's speaking.
Yeah, it was Frank. Can I offer a comment?
Oh, yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's another way you can do this. I mean, obviously you want to have some public input. You want to have them to have an opportunity to engage with a candidate and be in a position to evaluate and offer some commentary to the board. And so it's kind of hard to do that when you guys are trying to interview the individual as well. And so one way you might be able to do this is before you actually do your interview, you could invite the candidates into the school district. Have them go to Josh's TV studio, and you could do an interview there. Someone, either from the administration or from the board, could do a sort of a mock interview over a half hour or an hour. That way, everyone can see the show. They can actually see what took place. They can offer commentary. They can write emails to the board. Then you can do your interview after with the board, having all of that information in front of you about what the public had to say. That gives the public an even opportunity to be able to voice their opinion on the two candidates.
Yeah.
That sounds really good, and I think I'd love to hear from Art, and it looks like Gina has a comment as well.
Yeah, I thank Frank for that. I think that's an excellent idea, and clearly, if you have the capability of doing that could very, very nicely fit into the process, and give the public the opportunity that you folks want there to for the public to not only see the candidates but have an opportunity to interact with them. So I think, if that's in the cards, that's wonderful. That would work well. I also want to circle back to something you said, Jennifer, and that is, it's up to you, of course. This is your search, and we want it to play out the way you folks want it to play out. I do think there's something to be said for some sort of a confidential interaction between the board and the candidates that you're considering, so that you can hear from them what they think about moving forward, and also so they can express to you, because some of them have expressed it to me, the fact that they really feel a responsibility to their present districts, and they really want to be sure that this plays out in a way that's fair to their districts as their present districts, whether they're a superintendent or assistant superintendent or whatever position they hold. They really, I think there's a feeling that they really want to be careful to be there for their districts and to meet their obligations for their districts as they're going through the process of being considered for moving into your district. The other thing that you might want to consider, and we can talk more about this as we move down the road on the search, but that would be the start date for the new superintendent. If you elongate the selection process, the review process, if you will, you might want to think about also a different start date, clearly than a start date different than July 1. I don't know what the start date would be, but you might want to consider some flexibility in that date as well.
Yes, thank you. And this is certainly an extraordinary situation, so we'll all have to be a little more flexible and creative than we ever thought we would be.
Yeah, Jenny?
I just want to call on Gina because she had raised her hand.
Okay.
So I just want to ask, I think the CCTV idea is great, but I don't know, from what I'm hearing from Art, that the candidates, I think, want to keep the confidentiality a little bit longer until things are a little more settled. And I think as soon as we go to the CCTV, the cat's going to be out of the bag. So is it possible to think about having the candidates perhaps do some kind of, I don't know, video or whatever that we can look at ahead of time? That's not even necessarily an interview process, but take a couple minutes on video and tell us about what's your educational philosophy or whatever we want to ask them. And that can be still kept confidential, trying to be sensitive to their desire to keep it confidential so that their districts don't feel like they've been tossed into complete and total chaos. I think as soon as we do the CCTV thing, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think what's interesting about this, as I understand it, and Art, jump in if I'm saying this wrong, but I think in some other states, there's less of an ability to have a kind of a confidential element that involves the full board. But I believe under our right to know laws, we can have a confidential conversation with a candidate. And it may be that because of these extraordinary circumstances, it would be appropriate for us to do that prior to this public process and the CCTV process. It certainly would not be a substitute for it because it's a critically important part of our process to have the public input, but we need to be able to have the conversation about some of the flexibility that really I think is difficult to have in a public session.
So Jed, I have a question. So I mean, I try to put myself in a similar position here, and I always come away with the feeling that, am I not letting my school board down by not telling them that I'm applying for another position? Don't they have a responsibility to let their boards know that they're a finalist? I mean, the longer they wait, the more difficult it is for the district to be able to move forward. I would think it would be their responsibility to come forward, Art.
Under normal circumstances, Frank, I think that might be the case. And the fact of the matter is, under normal circumstances, I doubt we'd even be having this conversation. I think I can speak with some confidence when I say, if these names are released too soon, you're going to lose candidates. Now, you might want to take that risk and do it. That's clearly your choice. It's your search. But what I'm hearing from them is they're saying, fine, I'll try to make this work any way I can, but you have to know, given the circumstances, it is a really difficult thing to do at this time. And I think that's what we're facing. And I'm not saying that we should elongate the search, by 6 months. I'm saying a few weeks might give you the room that you need. But I think another piece of this, and this is just my point of view, I mean, we all have to kind of look at what makes sense, but another piece of this that might make sense would be to have a private conversation with the candidates coming forward to be sure that under the circumstances, given the way you want to move, in other words, what you have planned, when you plan to release the dates, how you plan to interact with the community, that they in fact want to come forward with that so that they know. Because right now, they don't know what the process is. Frank, the fact of the matter is, right now, we don't know what the process is because we're trying to figure that out. So I think part of what we want to do, or part of what I would suggest, is that we think about the process and then be able to inform the candidates as to what we think that process is going to look like when it comes to pass.
Yeah, well, again, just my 2 cents worth, and obviously, I feel for this because I've been in similar situations, as a candidate, and so, my suggestion would be that Tom, as the, ranking member who served on the search committee, call both candidates and say, look, we're really excited about your candidacy. We want to get you in here to have the folks meet you. Let us know what's a good time, but we're really excited. If I'm one of those candidates, Art, and I know Concord is really excited to get me, then I'm going to be all the more anxious to want to come up there because I don't want to lose that opportunity.
That's one person's point of view, and I understand where you're coming from. What I need to hear from is the board.
Okay.
I mean, that's clearly what we're dealing with.
Well,
David Parker has his hand up. Go ahead.
I would assume that under normal circumstances, a superintendent search would, in a normal setting, they would have the same challenge of letting their community know that they're looking for another job, but that's reality.
Yes,
People go, they look for new jobs.
Right.
I do think these are some extreme situations, but I'm wondering what we do under normal circumstances. And secondly, I think Dr. Bass's idea is a good one. And before I say that, I want to thank Tom for all his hard work, but is ask them. Maybe they can help us to say, okay, this is the time frame that I'd like, with having some windows that we have to abide by,
right, or
that we would ask them to abide by. No, this isn't going to go to July. No, it may not even go to June, but we may be able to, to meet yours,
exactly.
set a different time frame. And that shows our willingness to work with them. It
Right.
shows our appreciation for their considering us. And I think it may be one solution.
Thank you, Dave. And I guess the question then it would be for Tom is that something that you would feel comfortable with, or is there a different way of proceeding that you might like to have the board consider tonight as we talk about it?
No, I'd be happy to do that. I would be happy to do that. I would want to make sure that we've got, a very scripted idea of what the board would like to hear from them. But I think the gist of it, as I understand it, is that I would call and ask them to let us know where they stand right now, what would they think their timeline would look like, and essentially move from there, and then probably talk a little bit about that our board would be interested in having at least it sounds like we'd be willing to have a confidential conversation just to move the process a little bit further. Did I hear that correctly?
I mean, I think that one of the things that is going to be critically important is to kind of have you report back on it sometime within the relatively near future so that we as a board can just think about, I mean, how do we exercise this flexibility? It's unwieldy for us, obviously, but I think if you can have the preliminary conversation and then we can even meet on a confidential basis as a board without the candidates being present just to talk about this process, maybe that would be helpful. And that's certainly something that I think we could do associated with the hiring process.
I do too. I don't have I have a suspicion, and Art, tell me if you think I'm on the right track here. I have a suspicion that this board is ready to move forward.
Yes.
And really what we're looking for is the comfort level of our candidates to say, yep, we're ready to move forward too. We're ready to have confidentiality, put aside, and we're ready to move the process. And that's what I want to get from them.
Yeah.
To hear from them, date sure, and ready to go.
I mean, at the same time, we want to keep the candidates. I mean, we want to honor the screening committee process. And it's been really important as we've talked conceptually about this process that we have multiple candidates, because I think that's important from the community's perspective and from our perspective. So if by being a little bit more flexible and a little more extended, we can make sure that we do have multiple candidates, I think that's important to us. But to Dr. Bass's point, I think we don't want to protract the process beyond what's necessary, and beyond what is necessary and appropriate given the whole COVID-19 situation.
Yeah, good.
Jenny?
I agree. I think I can get that done in the next few days.
Great.
And get back to you, Jenny, and then we can address the entire board with that information.
And I know we're loading up the 13th because we're already meeting to vote on our budget and to approve our contracts, but that is another opportunity, and I think under the circumstances, if we need to have a conversation on the 13th, maybe we will. Gina, go ahead.
Can I ask, how many candidates are we looking at this point in time?
Art, Art, this is Jack. Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I don't think I'm at liberty to say because everything we've done has been in non-public session. I don't believe that I'm at liberty to say that. I think that would be up to you folks.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
No, not at all. It's just part of the process, I think.
That's a good question. It's an awkward conversation, I guess, but hopefully we'll get to a point where we can have a more explicit conversation.
So, Jenny, I will endeavor to get an answer and get some answers for us for Monday's meeting. And I do want to put out there that I have been in constant contact with Josh from CCTV, thinking down the road that to make sure that we were giving the public an opportunity to participate, I talked with him about a scenario of either having the candidates there or having them come in virtually and having that advertised through our district so that the public would know, and then have sort of a question and answer meet and greet, but it would be virtual. And he is absolutely on board with that and feels that that we can definitely do that.
Great.
Oh, that's great, Tom, and thank you, Josh, for everything that you're doing to help us during this kind of remote meeting. Anything else, or Jack, any other comments on the superintendent search process? Thank you all so much for the time you put into this. And Danielle, you too, although you have not said a lot.
No, I think this is a good place to be. I really do. I think having some interaction with the candidates so that you understand some of the limitations that they feel given the circumstances, and being sensitive to those to the extent that you can, and also having the candidates understand what your limitations are and what your expectations are for moving forward. I think that's a really important part of the process. And Tom and Jack, however you want to go forward, I'm happy to help you with those conversations in any way that I can that you'd like me to engage in. So I think this is the right place to be. And then I think at the end of the conversations and at the end of the board's deliberations, you'll have an understanding of how the next phases of the search are going to play out. The candidates will be aware of that. The board members will be aware of that. And you can also make the public aware so that everyone understands from here out, given the trying circumstances that we're experiencing, this is the way we think this is going to play out. And here's where we think we'll end up by whatever time it is, whatever date it is. I think that's a good way to go. And I think Frank's idea, or Frank's invitation for the cable TV interaction is excellent. And if you can pull that off, I think that would be a great way to go.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming to the meeting to help explain the process. And Danielle, did you have your hand up? I think you did at one point.
No, I just got kicked out and I just came back in, so I'm all set now.
Well, thank you.
So one other point, Jenny, back to Art's last comment. I mean, I'd be glad to set that in motion for you. And, you know, I don't have a vested interest here. I'm not going to be working for this person. I'm not going to be here. And so, therefore, I'd be a neutral party. You can't have someone on the board do it because that's going to be awkward, and you can't have Jack do it because Jack's going to end up working for that individual. So I'd be glad to be the host, if you will, for this TV show, and then what the board members could do is give me a list of questions that they want to make sure that I ask, and that way we could run through 2, 3, or 4, however many finalist candidates you have, but we could do it at a half-hour or 45-minute show, which, you know, Josh and I are pretty good at now. We've done a lot of these, and that way the folks would be in a position to write into us and let us know what they think.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for offering that.
Yep.
I think that, can I offer just one thing? Frank, thank you for that. Although I really would like to have ask my own questions with the person sitting on the virtual side of me, because I think, you know, you might respond to how we would answer one question, and you might want to follow up on that. So, I mean, I really would like to be able to virtually meet these people, because I think it's a very effective medium.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that we would have that as well. I think what Frank has offered is more for the public, so that the public could have the benefit of watching them during this interaction. But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right. I mean, that's the way I was envisioning it, that you'd have the show for the public, so the public would have an opportunity to respond. The board would have their own interview with the candidates, whoever they might be, and whatever number they might be, but that would be after you have the show. That way the board would also be armed with what the commentary from the public was regarding the candidates.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Jenny, I was just going to say pretty much what Frank said is I would very much enjoy the information being out there and then having the input from the public to guide our questions and to to give us something to pursue a little more. So I'm very much in favor of that sort of an approach.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on the superintendent search?
Hearing none.
So Jenny, I will, I guess I'll address my comments to Art and Jack and Danielle. I will talk with you folks tomorrow, and we'll put a plan in action.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Great,
Good, sounds great. Thank you all.
yes, thanks to everyone. So, moving on,
For Monday.
our next agenda item is the newly added one on the amicus brief. If you remember back in March, the board voted to join as an amicus in the school funding case that's currently pending before the New Hampshire Supreme Court, and that was subject to reviewing the brief. And we did get a copy of that brief. Board members had the opportunity to look at it. Several of us did, and I know I was one of them. But Gina and Tom, I think, also looked at it, so I don't know if you have any comments. Personally, I was comfortable with it, but I wanted to let others speak as well. Gina, did you have any comments on the brief?
Yeah, I let me first say, after having done law review at law school, that there is no desire greater on earth than the desire to edit somebody else's work. It's not how I would have written it. I think there are some spots where it clearly, poor John Tobin's frustration really is peaks out a little bit. But notwithstanding that, I think the concerns that I had about the tone that it was that it might have taken did not come to fruition. I think for the most part, it's right on key. It's, as I say, there are a couple of sentences that I wouldn't have put in there, but it's really straight to the point. And I think, I thank God I don't sit on the Supreme Court. I have no concerns whatsoever about joining in the brief. And I think I was one of the big promoters of I'm not going to join without reading it first. So having read it, having done some of the background research, I don't have any concerns anymore.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Gina, for taking the time to do that. Anyone else? Tom, I know you took a look at it also.
Yep, I did, and I can tell you that I know now why I'm not an attorney, because that sort of wording is for a very special group of folks, and I'm not one of them. However, once I got through all of that, it does explain the concerns that New Hampshire does not fund their schools adequately, and there's not any, in some places the adequacy is just not happening whatsoever for districts, and two, that the brief seemed to say that they wanted the court to simply go by what they had already previously said, that they would do adequate funding. And so for that reason, I think that I would love to have our names on that brief to send forward and to say, look, we've got districts that are really, really struggling. And I know that Berlin, New Hampshire is one, Pittsburgh is another. Some of those districts are just really, really, really struggling. And the taxpayers in their respective towns, as ours are as well, are taking more and more of the load. And if this brief does anything to alleviate any of that, I'd like our name on it.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, I think from my perspective, it was reassuring to see that this brief was very data-driven, and I think that having a number of districts joining as amici is a way of getting that data in front of the court. And I think Concord's data speaks to similar challenges as to other districts. And so that was what we voted, and personally I was comfortable with the brief. I don't know that we need another vote because we already took the vote, but if any other members have questions or want to speak to it, we could have that conversation.
This is Barb, and I would just like to really, really support everything that Tom said. And those of us on the board know that Tom and I often sit on separate sides of the seesaw, but he eloquently spoke really the gist of it, and I just want to say that everything he said, I say.
Thank you, Barb.
Jenny, it's Linda.
Yes.
A brief comment.
Yes, Linda, go ahead.
I'm looking at the minutes of March 2nd, pages 9 and 10 of the board book, and the vote that you took doesn't look like it was preliminary. It looks like you do need to take another vote, because the final sentence of the resolution was, final approval shall be contingent upon review of the draft brief. So I think contingency would require a new vote.
Okay, and I'm looking at that as well. So I think what I'll do is, there was language for a motion that we looked at the last meeting, and so what I'll do is I'll make the motion and I will review it. I mean, I'll just take the language right out of those minutes, and I'll take out the contingency so that we can just have another vote on it. So I will move that the board of the Concord School District agrees to be a signatory to the amicus brief to be filed in the New Hampshire Supreme Court in the Conval school funding case on behalf of a number of school districts across the state. The board understands that this brief is being prepared without any cost to the district, that the filing of this brief does not commit the district to any ongoing role in the Conval case, and the draft of the brief has been reviewed.
Second.
And that was Barb, right?
Yep, that was me.
I want to second that. Yeah.
I'm in the minutes, so I got to look back at my
Darn, I did too.
my meeting.
Mhm.
I win.
Okay, so it was moved by Jenny, seconded by Barb, and Lyndon, you must have that language, I think, because I just took it straight from the minutes with the contingency. Okay.
I'm all set with that, thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any discussion? David?
Well, this has been going on for a long time, and I'm really very pleased to be supporting it. And I appreciate John's efforts with regard to this. So I think it's a very important issue for our students and for our residents of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other discussion? So seeing none, I will call the roll on a question of joining the amicus brief with no contingencies. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Curto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Abstain.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Patterson votes aye. So that was approved 8-0 with one abstention, the abstention being Mr. Richards.
Jenny,
Yes,
will you take it upon yourself to let John know?
yes. I will do that. Thank you. Gina, do you have your hand up?
No, that was me. I was asking the question if you would call John.
Okay, no, I'll email John, because he had emailed me the brief, so I'll let him know tomorrow. Okay. Next agenda item is the proposed calendar of meetings.
Yes, as you can see in the back of your packet, we have a calendar of meetings now. It's been a little bit truncated, as I'm sure you can appreciate. Our next meeting is going to be on the 13th. That's at 5:30, and that is our final budget meeting where the board will actually vote on the budget. So I want the public to realize that. Again, we'll have the same setup, so the public will be able to comment on any of the discussion and commentary regarding the budget as we go through this option A, option B scenario, and the board comes to a definitive position as to where they want to be. So that'll take place on April 13th, which is exactly a week from today. That'll be at 5:30, and it'll be virtual, as is this meeting. Other than that, we just have in May our annual board meeting, I should say monthly board meeting, which will be on May 4th. May I make a suggestion to the board? There was some commentary last session that we had about Nate Levinson and the opportunity for the full board to have it, to be able to hear him and to understand what he would do, what the costs were, and all those considerations. My suggestion would be that we have Nate join us virtually at our next board meeting. He can go through what a phase one might look like. The board would be in a position to ask questions and entertain a consideration if that's something they wish to pursue or not.
Thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a great suggestion. And while you are on it, it reminds me that, Gina, you wanted to speak to the question you raised earlier about when the board will circle back to some of the matters we considered in March. So do you want to speak to that now? And maybe we can add it to our May meeting as well.
Well, I thought we'd add it maybe after the proposed calendars, or is that what we're doing now? So, yeah, there were a couple of, as I went through the agendas. So, for example, JV hockey, back to the dreaded JV hockey. We mentioned that we wanted to see numbers, we wanted to see figures, we wanted to talk to the people about JV hockey, whether it was successful, whether it wasn't successful, how we were going to fund it. Unfortunately, that's going to, I guess, get stuck into the budget this year, and then we'll have to figure out going forward. But JV hockey was one of the issues that we said we'd get back around to, and we unfortunately haven't. Then there was another one about the OT, the new time for the occupational therapist that was coming in, and what was happening with respect to the Medicaid reimbursement, and whether or not just what was happening with the Medicaid reimbursement and whether some of the OT would be covered by that. Then there was another one on March 9th. There was a conversation about whether or not we wanted to reach out to Bill White and see whether he was willing to not do his annual sort of increase to the contract cost, given our long-standing relationship with him, whether he was willing to sort of hold the line on the contract costs for the purposes of this extraordinary financial crisis that we're in.
Yeah, let me respond to that last one. Yes, we are doing that. And I'll have that answer for you on Monday.
Yeah, I was going through, and those were things that we'll get back to it.
Right.
So, Dina, thank you. Those are all important. I think my suggestion on those would be that the JV hockey and the OT Medicaid reimbursement, that we take them up at our May meeting along with the Nate Levinson. I think we have enough to occupy ourselves during April under the circumstances. I think the Bill White question, we absolutely do need to hear that information on Monday before we do our budget vote. So that one I think we should do in April. Right. Would that be okay with you, Gina, if we did all of those in May?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear if we know what's happening with the Medicaid reimbursement. That definitely affects the budget. JV hockey, it's really too late to ask anybody to come in and do it at this point. There was discussion about reviewing all of the athletics and what was I don't want to say cost effective, but what was reaching the most of the most students and is really a good bang for the buck on the budget. I don't think there's time to fit that in before next Monday. But I think that what we need to do probably in May is look at when we can set up a time to do that, with really a thorough look at the various programs and which ones really do serve the students well and which ones may not serve the students as well.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I agree. I think that we can talk about it in May, and it'll be really a process that'll take over the next year, and I think we are very much committed to having that conversation and having the feedback and, really reviewing the program. I think it's really important for us to do it, but I think we shouldn't do it in April. Lyndon, do you have a question?
Yes, please. I wouldn't say that I read the minutes, every single paragraph of them as I go through them, but I don't believe that Nate Levinson is mentioned in any of the minutes, and I'm guessing that members of the public don't know who he is or why he's coming up in conversation or might be scheduled to talk to the board. Could someone speak to that briefly?
Yes, thank you, Lyndon, and you're correct. That was not part of the minutes, and Dr. Bass can speak to it, but just in brief, there was a subgroup that met, and again, this was right before the whole COVID-19 situation hit, talking about the concept of doing a more comprehensive review of our special education program. In other words, let's look really in a comprehensive way at all of these questions that we had a lot of conversations about, particularly during our March meeting, and whether we could have a more systematic approach to it. And so he is someone who could do that for us, but the question is, what might that look like? What might be the cost? What might be the time frame? So it's something that's really, we probably would want to look at and set in motion outside of our budget process, but I personally think it would be really important and good to do, but we need to do it publicly because it hasn't been brought forward publicly yet. But Dr. Bass, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just I think you've hit the main points. I really germinated from a conversation we had at the board level, talking about the various costs that are involved with our Bill White program, our special ed program. And so the question was, it would be nice to be able to have a clear understanding of what works, what doesn't work, and how might one best address those particular issues. And so having an expert come in and do that for us would be a good way to go. And so, as you've already mentioned, we did have a small ad hoc committee interview him. We spent a good hour and a half or so talking with him about what he does, why he does it, and how that might be a benefit to us. So I think it'll be a great conversation for the board and the public to talk about how we might be able to look at our programs regarding student services and what kinds of shifts, changes, or reconsiderations we might be able to make.
Great, thank you. I think, Liza, did you have a question? Someone had a question.
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. I guess it was Lyndon's question. I only get people's initials, so that's why. Okay, anything else on the proposed calendar of meetings? Gina, did we address everything that you wanted to speak to?
Yes, everything that I found that was a circle around.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for catching all of those things. Next up is public comments on any topic. So I'll turn it back over to Jeff and see what members of the public might want to comment.
Okay, so I will start at the top. First name I see is Mr. Marcus. If he is available, can you, do you wish to speak?
Yes, hello, how are you?
Great, how are you? Thank you.
Good. I appreciate it. It looks like you guys have gone way over in time tonight, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I do want to know at what point in time will grading policies be addressed by the board, as I do have some things I'd like to say about that.
You're welcome to go ahead and make public comments, and it may be that it'll be something that Dr. Bass can address. He did speak a little earlier during the meeting. I'm not sure whether you were online during that conversation, though. So
I might have missed that.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I am a teacher at a different school, and I have experience with competency-based education, and I do feel that a purist approach to competency-based education is harmful to kids. I have 3 students, one who has graduated recently from Concord High School, one who's in Concord High School, and my daughter who is currently at Runlet. And so I'm very concerned about moving in that direction again, in a purist way. I do think that there certainly are aspects of it that could be beneficial. I think identifying learning targets and competencies is probably a really good thing for teachers to do. But I do believe that there's a underlying flaw in the philosophy. If you identify summatives and say that these are going to be measures for testing, and then we will say that we will only use that as a measure for the student grade, and we will take out formatives, and we will take out
is now exiting
from the equation. What ends up happening is, well, first of all, that's not a correct thing, because we don't make perfect summatives, and so we don't really get a perfect measure even when we do that. But beyond that, students will lose motivation to do the formative work when it no longer counts as part of the grade. In addition, the habits of work and work study practices, whatever you want to call that, become less of a focus as well, because it's also no longer part of the grade. I don't think Concord necessarily was going in that direction. I think you still have a little piece of your grade that is sort of acknowledging that habits of work kind of idea. So I don't know where that's headed, but I certainly want to raise a flag and say, warning, please don't go there. The other thing, I'll try not to take too much time, and I could go on and on, but the other thing I guess I really want to make sure I highlight is the 4-point grading system. And I want to be clear, I don't care how the final grade is reported. If the final grade is a 3.72 or a 94,
now joining.
That's fine with me. What I'm concerned about is if you go to a 4-point scale when you're grading, you basically have 3 buckets to put kids in. If you're currently in a system where a 60 to a 100 represents all the passing scores that you can give, there's 40 different scores that a teacher can give a student to indicate where they fell. If you go to a 4, 3, or 2, 5, which I think is the system they're looking at, you end up with a system where a teacher has to make a call to put the kid in one of 3 buckets for a passing grade. That means that the kid that might have gotten the 60 is now getting the 2.5, but the kid that might have gotten a 69 or a 70 might also get a 2.5. And over time, if that consistently happens, you end up not allowing kids to really show their merit. You end up without kids having a chance to really distinguish themselves or really show the differences in the level of work that they're doing. So, again, I have a lot of objections to the system, and I've been working with it for several years now. So I do want the board to be aware of those concerns. As I'm talking as a teacher, certainly, but of course as a parent, because I'm concerned about my kids in the system. We are so concerned that we are really, for my daughter who's 11 and she's in 6th grade, we are exploring looking into private schools and not sending her to Concord High School. That's how deeply we feel about this. And I'd hate to see that happen. I'm a strong believer in public education. And I don't want to move outside the system, and I really wouldn't want to see that happen. But I do want you to know that's how deeply we feel about this, as we feel that the level of education that our kids are going to receive is going to go down. Expectations for students will go down. Teachers who want to get learning targets covered by all the kids in their class, because everybody has to pass every target, are going to lower their standards to help that happen. Not even intentionally, not because they're bad teachers, by the way. I think the teachers at Concord High are great. But I think it's a natural pressure that happens as a result of a purist approach to competency-based grading. Doesn't mean the whole baby has to be thrown out with the bathwater. I think there could be some good things, from the system that get implemented. But I do want to throw up a flag of caution.
Well, thank you so much for your comments and for sticking with us through the meeting and through the whole remote participation. I think that some of the things that Dr. Bass said earlier may address some of your concerns. I don't know if he wants to briefly hit on them, but I think there will be further discussion of this. And Dr. Bass, is there anything that you
I did join late, so I might have missed what you said.
Yeah, briefly, I just so there are other people who may want to be, asking questions or offering commentary. So, I mean, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, and I think, sometimes we get carried away with the whole competency thing, and it's like, RTI, it's like UBD, it's like you want to hang the shingle out there and say, well, we're a UBD school. And when in reality, there are certain elements of those programs that are very good, and you want to have those, but you don't have to go wholesale. So I think it's similar here with a competency, and everyone agrees that competencies are an important part of the learning continuum, and you want to have those opportunities where students can demonstrate a competency in a particular area. Where it gets a little bit dicey is when you get too concerned about, as you said, the 4-point scale, and having that just be the sole basis for the students' cumulative performance rating, if you will. And so, I'm kind of looking more in the direction of going back to an old system, but still within a competency basis, and that's, A, B plus B, C plus C, D kind of situation. One, that's something that everybody understands. Two, it gives a little bit more gradation, if you will, between grades. And again, I think most importantly, it's something that folks are quite accustomed to. They understand what an A means. They understand what a B plus means. They understand what a B means. I think when they see 1, 2, and 3, it's like, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Then they try to compute it out on a 0 to 100 score, and they say, oh, 3 is an 82. Well, that doesn't make sense. And so I think that's where a lot of confusion comes into play. But I would also say that, most of us many people who are very good teachers have been doing competencies for a long time. So it's not like it's a new concept. It's just that I think education has, like they always do, put a big what's what I'm looking for, banner on it and said, oh, that's what we have to do. And I don't disagree with it. I think, as you've said, competencies are a great thing, but sometimes we can get carried away.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Marcus. And I think there'll be further conversation about this.
For sure.
All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Jack.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Next. Oh, all right. All right, moving down the line. Miss Willingham.
I am all set, thank you.
Okay. All right, that's phone number ending in 3888. Are you there? And do you want to make a comment? Let me see something. I may need to. Oh no.
Stand up again.
Nothing there. Although it's muted, but it's not letting me unmute it, so I'm not quite sure what that is. If there's a problem, they can call the 603-513-908. Number ending in 5732. Any comment?
Hello?
Yes. 3888?
Hello? Yeah, this is Shay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, so, I actually,
Can you identify yourself?
Hello? I wanted to talk to you also about computer competency-based education, but from a slightly different angle from the last commenter's concerns. My real concern is that my understanding of competency-based education is that a child is given, tasks, and that they should show that they could do them, and how or when they really ever get to that competency is the real goal of that, I guess, philosophy that you guys are looking into or have enacted. And I think that sounds as though it ought to be good, but my observation and my concern is that what is in fact happening is that my son no longer or is not being trained to hand in his work on time. He is, and we're in a position where many of the teachers, and these are fantastic teachers, kind of feel like, well, as long as the student gets it, whenever they get it, that's fine. In practicality, what's happening is that the quarter is ending, and my son is being asked, kind of I begged, to hand in his papers or whatever his assignments are, and then he is receiving good grades for them because he is actually reasonably bright and can do well when he does. And so the effect is that he comes to me and says, oh, look, Mom, I got good grades, and yet my concern is that he has not been supported for the competency of being able to set goals, being able to meet those goals, being able to prepare and triage and prioritize, and all those kind of executive functions that seem to have been kind of pushed aside And so while he feels that he is being rewarded for doing a good job and thinks that his grades, which are, objectively pretty good, he gets the equivalent of A's and B's or whatever the new greatest and greatest is for grading him. In fact, I think he is, my concern is that he's not really, somebody I would like to hire myself in an office setting. Like, he doesn't know how to meet goals. He doesn't know how to manage his time in any effective way. He doesn't know how to actually take ownership of his own assignments, because the teachers are just kind of like, well, whenever it gets in, as long as you know it, honey, that's fine. So I want to have, I don't know what your plans are for competency-based education, but I would like to also, kind of tangential to what the last commenter was, say that that's my biggest concern with it, that we are asking for competencies of content, but not of executive function. But we do need that in a population-based style of education from our graduating seniors and people that we want to hire, that they can do that. And I want to know, eventually how the board is going to grapple with that, if we want to do competencies for both content, but also how do we support students in being able to more like I said, more executive function type skills.
Thank you for your comment. And it's interesting because the first conversation that we had as a board was around competency-based grading in CRTC, where the works habits are a very central part of that. So I'm sure that it will be part of the conversation, but it is important. Let me ask you to identify yourself so that our minute recorder can include your name in the minutes.
Of course, Christina Taylor.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And Dr. Bass, did you have any other responses?
Yeah, Christine and I had this conversation before, and I don't disagree with her. I mean, I think, expectations should be clear, and there are consequences when expectations aren't met. That doesn't mean, they're dire and severe, but clearly you have to have expectations, and you have to have a sense of duty and responsibility. As I said to Christina, if we're assigning homework and, Jack's in my class and he doesn't turn the homework in until the end of the quarter, so he thinks he's going to get credit for it, it makes no sense because he's lost the whole meaning behind the homework. The homework is assigned because it has some direct intrinsic value to the learning at that particular moment in time, not to be turned in as an assignment later. So again, it's consequences and it's also expectations. And expectations have to have a very direct relationship to whatever it is you're doing in the classroom. It's not about just chores. It's about having meaning to whatever it is you're asking the child to do.
Thank you, Dr. Bass, and thank you, Ms. Taylor, for your comments.
Okay. Again, number ending in 5732. Any comment? That was the last one I had.
Jack, I'm not sure that participants know how to unmute.
Well, if they dial in, I'll
Hello?
it says mute. Oh, I did have them. Sorry, go ahead. Try again. You there? 5732.
Can you hear me?
Yes. You there?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Fantastic. My name is Zeus Simeone.
Okay, great.
And I also wanted to mention the competency-based learning. I even hate to call it that because what we're talking about is not competency-based learning. It's a bunch of things that we're doing kind of under the jurisdiction of that. I'm aware that New Hampshire is going into competency-based learning. I've also found out recently that it's pretty much just New Hampshire and Vermont that are doing all these experimental procedures with the grading. So once you start calling schools like University of Connecticut, they hardly even know what to do with these kids anymore. That come from New Hampshire, kind of putting them in an unfortunate situation if they're going to try to apply to a college. The reason I think we're all concerned about competency-based education is twofold. First of all, there's the coffees with the principals that we've been having recently, and this is one of the last most recent school boards that we've been able to attend since that happened. But in addition to that, we have our kids coming home. Again, this was like a month ago when there was actually school, saying that they had received these large sales pitches from the schools about how they're going to make all these big changes for next year and how we have to be very excited about it. And the kids are coming home very disheartened by everything because they're just being told that all these changes are going to happen. And when I had the coffee with the principal, I was assured that these changes were only in the running, that they hadn't, they were going to have them approved. But the fact is they are already being done. We already have a lot of teachers who are just giving 82s to everybody because they can't give them 100s. And those are the two choices they had. As Mr. Marcus was saying, they only have a couple of really boxes to put the kids in. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're all talking about this particular issue. I come at it from a completely different perspective. I'm a college professor, and so I'm scared of my kids getting odd grades because they're not going to get it in college. And one of the things that a high school needs to do is to prepare the kids to go to college. And as was mentioned previously, the kids aren't getting deadlines either. They can hand in things whenever they want to, and what they're being prepared to do is to frankly fail my class, because there's no way they can take these standards that they're being taught with no deadlines and pass pretty much any college class. As a matter of fact, we're having huge difficulties now with the online learning component because the kids have to have a lot of self-discipline in order to do the online learning component. They have to do it themselves. They don't have teachers there constantly. And the kids, we're having incredible difficulty over here because they have been rewarded for years since they've come to the Concord school system, been told that, you can hand in things whenever you want to. It's okay. As long as you figure it out eventually, that's fine. If you don't do well on a test, you can retake it later on. Why study? There's no point in studying because you can just retake a test later on, or at least enough of the tests. So, so I guess my question is reflecting the previous ones, except I want a little bit more focus on it. I'm curious as to how we as community members can broach this subject and either, to be perfectly honest with you, put a stop to it so that we can have deadlines for our students, and so that when they take tests, it counts. And whether or not I should attend more school board meetings, or whether or not I should write letters, or what can I do as a community member?
Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad you were finally able to speak, Mr. Simeone. And I think
Me too.
Were you listening for the entire meeting? Because I know Dr. Bass did speak to some of it, but he may be able to speak again to the process. I think
I was
contemplated. So.
I was able to, and I don't know why I wasn't able to speak before. I was listening to Bass, and he. I don't disagree with any of the things that he's saying, but at the same time, the reflections that he's saying are not currently being enacted by at least the high school. He's saying that deadlines are useful for assignments. Well, they don't have them. He's saying that, we shouldn't experiment in grading. Well, they already have. I mean, this has been a couple of years at this point. It's been enacted. And I understand that the people who enacted it are no longer there, but what they've done is just still plowing forward.
So I think, Dr. Bass, I don't know if you want to speak at all to the process that you're contemplating. I think you mentioned it, and it was started and then interrupted by COVID-19, which makes it a little awkward. But yeah, would you like to add anything at this point?
Well, I mean, certainly, we've talked about this now, I think, both in the beginning and throughout the meeting. And I think my goal is to make sure that parents understand, where it is we'd like to go and how we'd like to go there. I don't want to make any decisions about anything without having the conversation with folks. The last thing I think we need to do is to say, well, we're going to do this because we've been doing it for 5 years and we think this is the right thing to do. So I think, we need to have that conversation. I think there's also some discrepancy about what some teachers are doing and what some teachers are not doing. And I think there has to be a very clear understanding that whatever teachers do, by and large, is going to be systematic of the entire school system or school building. And so I don't want to hear about some people having expectations and other people not having expectations. And those are things that we have to get ironed out. There's a lot to be sort of unpacked here in terms of how we go forward and what makes the most sense. I hear what people are saying. I don't disagree with a lot of the commentary that's being made. I think there is value to competency-based education. I do disagree, Zeus, with one point, and that is the colleges, because we did make a lot of phone calls to a lot of colleges, some high-minded colleges, and then our state universities as well. And they have no problem with it going with a 1-to-4 system. Many schools are doing that. So I don't think that's going to be a major issue for us, but I think more importantly for us is we want to make sure that what we do has direct value and connection for the students, and they understand why they're getting the grade they're getting, and obviously that there is a learning process that's occurring, and they understand how that occurs and what they need to do to make sure that it occurs in the best way possible. So I think this is a conversation that's going to take some time. There's not going to be a quick, easy answer for it. And I think it's important for the school to lay this out the right way so parents and students and teachers all feel comfortable with the direction we take.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr.
I do have one more question. Is there a proper nomenclature or terminology to use? Because we're using the term competency-based, but the lack of deadlines and being able to retake tests over again really doesn't have a lot to do with competency-based. I mean, even I'm a psychology professor, and I use competency-based, but that just means that I put some competencies in the syllabus and expect the students to adhere to them, and I try to kind of aim my lessons toward those competencies. And that's really all it requires. It has nothing to do with the grading or anything. And I'm worried that if we market this, all these gradings and lack of standards, as competency-based, that we'll feel more obligated to do it because the state of New Hampshire has advocated for competency-based learning. Is there a different term we should be using?
Well, I mean, I think we've got two issues here. One is, a competency-based approach, which you've already defined, and we don't disagree with that. The issue of relearning a task, I mean, that's something we've been doing for quite a while. I don't disagree with that either. I think that's a good thing to have. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to step and watch the Celtics championship game and blow off the test the next day and say, well, I can just retake the test on Friday. I mean, that's where I think you have to have a very clear set of understandings about why one would want to be in a position to be able to retake the test or to resubmit the paper. So, I mean, it's not just simply, well, I'm going to blow it off because I know I can just retake it down the road. That can't happen either.
So I think, thanks for everyone who's commenting on this. I think, again, it'll be a further conversation, and we're looking forward to having that.
Okay. We had someone else chime in, ending in 3488. 2488. Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Jack. This is Beth Richards.
Yes.
And I'm going to tag into this with Dr. Baskin and quickly hope that and ask a recommendation of the board, and specifically that of the instructional committee. I think that what you're hearing in this good conversation and what we hear from Superintendent Bass is, what is the process going to be? And that was the last slide that was up on the screen in January 23rd, 2019. So is it possible for the board, not now, I hope you all can go home really quickly, that is to ask the instructional committee to take this up in a slow process. The board asked for this a long time ago, and So, Barb, I'm kind of going to put you on the spot as the chair of the instructional committee, and work with a process going forward. Is that what the folks that are on the line can expect next? Thank you.
So, Barb, I don't know if you want to be put on the spot. I mean, I do thank you for that comment, Ms. Richards, and I think once we are back to having committee meetings again, that absolutely is the appropriate committee to house it. I think the question is, when will that be? Probably not till May at the earliest, but I do really want us to have that conversation. And Barb, I don't know if you have anything to offer as the chair.
So mostly I just need to be clear with all sides of this issue that we have to be very clear in this on the board's role and what the board actually has jurisdiction to do. That's one piece. But as someone involved in the district in many, many ways, a parent, a teacher, a board member, a student, all of this is an incredibly important conversation. So I can assure you that I will make sure whatever actions are taken thoughtfully.
Right.
But I can't promise or guarantee or promote one specific thing at this time. I just need to make sure I'm functioning properly as the instructional chair and as a board member. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does. And just to add to your comment, Barb, I mean, I agree with you, and I agree too with Beth that we want to be thoughtful, we want to be careful. There should be no rush to judgment here. I don't want to be in a position to say, oh well, June's coming around the corner, so we're gonna have to make a decision, and we'll figure it out down the road. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that we do this right, and people feel comfortable about it. There's a process, and that we follow our processes out as they take us to whatever direction they take us.
And please understand, I'm the managing director of a charter school right now, so I am answering these very same questions to the parents of my students.
Sure.
And I'm having to make decisions on behalf of my school as to how to grade and support our students academically. So,
right.
So I really do see all sides of this.
Right.
And I just hope I can bring all of that to the table in these discussions.
Same here.
So, to that end, thank you.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also on the instructional committee, and I agree with what Barb says. It's really not our function to dictate the actual policy. It's our job to oversee and see that they're following their protocol. That being said, I think any system of grading has its merits,
right.
and also has its unforeseen consequences.
For sure.
And I think Zeus brings up some good points, that, and I've heard this from students as well, that they get a little frustrated because not only do they feel that the grades aren't demonstrating their performance, but if you think about reaching competencies, a lot of times kids don't reach a competency, but the class is now moving on to the next competency and the next competency. And so they end up having to go back or not go back, and they don't reach the competencies, and they have a hard enough time with what they're doing day to day. So, I mean, we can iron those things out. It's a talented district. I think that we as board members can see that that's followed through and that the public has a voice.
Agreed.
So, I mean, I think it's a universal challenge in many districts and in private and public schools. From what I've seen, we're challenged by it too.
And I thank you all for that. Frank, this is Beth again, and it would be really helpful. And Barb, thank you for doing this. I know I called you to ask you that question, so I feel badly putting you on the spot now because we couldn't finish our conversation. But that was clearer. So what I've heard in the public is to understand who has that process and has the policy vote, if you will. So Dr. Bass, can that be provided as a next step? Not now, you don't have to answer my question, but as a follow-up to these minutes, in the first step, to clearly define where the policy decision is made and voted upon, and the next steps in that process. Because Barb, if you're saying it's not within instructional and you guys oversee it, if there is a change that will affect the handbook at the high school or a major policy such as this, what are those steps? So I just end there and hope that gets you ending your meeting. Thanks.
So thank you for calling in, and I think, you know, we do have a list of topics that we're looking for reports on in May, and I think this will definitely be on the list. So I appreciate that.
Is now exiting.
It's on my list of things to circle back around to.
Yep, we'll add it to that circling list. So, Jack, is there anyone else that needs to make public comment?
I don't see anybody else who hasn't either spoken or been asked. It's all the same individuals at this point, but.
Okay, well, in the interest of wrapping up the meeting,
Christina Taylor.
I think we've had
Is now exiting.
Discussion of many things, and we have successfully taken public comment, and we should feel good about that. And we have a list of things for the May meeting, which is also excellent.
Yep.
So I
Take a motion.
don't think there is anything further that we need other than a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I don't think that was Jim, I think. Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Seconded by Barb.
Michael.
Yep.
All in favor, please indicate
Is
by
now
saying
exiting.
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next Monday.
I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank-